and start us off. I'm Ashley Longstaff from the Kansas Leadership Center, and I've been with KLC for about almost 7 years. I'm the program manager for all of our custom programming, just making sure that all the details are in place and that you guys have a great experience in your upcoming program. So I'm also really excited to be, just personally excited to be on this because I actually grew up in Inman, just a little ways away from Hutchinson. And so it's just fun to be able to be on a project that's just close to home. So just excited to see familiar faces, not only from KLC, but from the early years of when I grew up in Inman. So I can recognize a couple of names on this. So I know that several of you have been through KLC programs. So that's really great just to see more engagement from you guys. So if you don't know about KLC, we are committed to fostering leadership for stronger, healthier, more prosperous Kansas communities. Since 2007, we've been building the leadership capacity of individuals and organizations and communities in Kansas, while also growing our national and global reputation for large-scale leadership development. We are generously funded and supported by a core operating grant from the Kansas Health Foundation, which allows us to do a couple of things. So one of those is we host numerous offerings of our leadership programs throughout the years. We have 3 core programs on our KLC path, which many of you have attended. We provide leadership transformation grants to organizations across the state, allowing them to send their employees or volunteers or just community engagement to the KLC path programs. And the Hutchinson Community Foundation has been a grant partner for several years. And then this year, 21, we just started partnering with all of the United Ways across the state. So we're connected. We're definitely not strangers by any means. And we also partner and support local community leadership programs across the state, like Lead Reno County. And then we also produce a quarterly magazine called The Journal that highlights important civic leadership issues in Kansas and beyond. So if that wasn't enough, that's just kind of our core work. But in addition to that, we have several other partnerships and custom initiatives that drive revenue back into KLC to help us grow our mission and reach. So if you've ever heard of Kansas Beats the Virus, that initiative, which was an effort to combat the spread of COVID, just by inspiring kind of grassroots solutions to keep Kansans healthy, schools and businesses open. That was an effort, kind of a custom initiative that we have going on. And then on the business development side, we just work with a whole range of organizations and companies who need a customized approach to leadership development or coaching skills training. So that's where kind of this group and this effort, this project comes in. So I believe it was the fall of 2020 when we started having a conversation about what it would look like to create an environment in Reno County that leads to trusting relationships and encourages collaboration amongst nonprofits. So that's kind of when the conversation started. And the more we talked about it, we just felt that this coaching skills program would be a really great fit. And so here we are launching this effort together. So I am going to turn it over to Seth Bate, who will be one of your teachers during the upcoming program. Seth will share a little bit about himself, what coaching is, and how it connects to other KLC, how it connects to the KLC leadership framework. So Seth, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. And if there are specific questions people have for me and you have access to the chat, drop them in there and I'll try to answer any of those questions. And I'm fortunate to know many of the faces in boxes I'm looking at. So glad to see those of you who have been part of my life in different stages over the years. some of you might know me. My full-time gig is with Wichita State University as part of the Community Engagement Institute. Kansas Leadership Center and Wichita State have worked out an arrangement that allows me to use part of my university time at Kansas Leadership Center as part of the teaching and coaching team. And I've had a relationship with KLC really since the beginning. Sometimes when I'm feeling like a little bit of a smartass, I say that I actually was the first employee because I was doing things to bring KLC into the world before Ed got hired. But we can arm wrestle about that sometime. How many of you either have in the last 10 years gone through Leadership Reno County or have been to a KLC program? Yeah, okay, so almost everybody. And for those of you who haven't had that experience yet, I hope that you'll take advantage of that. I don't have to tell you all, Leadership Reno County is one of the storied community leadership programs in Kansas, and really through all three phases of community leadership development in Kansas has been at the forefront. So you have a tremendous asset there. I am joining you from my home office in rural Cowley County near Winfield, and the wind is terrible today, which means the internet's a little sketchy. I am connected my audio by phone, so I should still be able to hear you and talk to you even if I freeze up. I'm not going to spend a long time talking about coaching, except to say, most importantly, coaching skills are incredibly useful in community work. And so this experiment that we're entering into together, this training opportunity, is intended to make your community work more effective more of the time. And a coaching mindset that you bring to your community work is a mindset of curiosity and discovery, and is a mindset of believing in people and believing in systems, believing that the solutions are there within them, and a mindset often of suspending problem solving in service to discovery. So one definition of coaching is that coaching is the gift of not giving advice. I won't suggest that coaching is the way to interact in every case, but coaching suggests a mindset and a set of skills that I think sometimes we don't consider when we're doing community work. And so going through this training is an opportunity to add that mindset and add those skills as one path you can follow as you're working together, and particularly as you're collaborating across organizations. One incredibly important link between a coaching mindset and the Kansas Leadership Center framework that many of you are familiar with and practice is the idea that the challenges that really stick with us, the things that are really hard to find our way through, are adaptive challenges where there's no one right answer. And so if you think of coaching as a place to not immediately problem solve and to not give advice, then it's a space where the discovery work that goes with making progress on adaptive challenges can happen. It's a place of engaging people and a place of curiosity. The problem with coaching is that once you start talking about it, it starts sounding very woo-woo ethereal. And I don't know, there's a place for all kinds of approaches. Those things turn me off pretty quickly. I'm not a very chakra-y person. So one of the things that's hard about coaching is it's hard to describe coaching without sounding like one of those coaching people. So I'll just acknowledge that's a tension for me in this room and invite your questions about coaching mindset and skills, because I think that's what it's about. It's not about the mysterious cosmic part of it. Anything else that would be helpful for you to know about me or my approach to coaching before we move on in our agenda? Then one other piece of information, and before I start asking some questions to some of your conveners, my co-trainer for this opportunity is going to be Dr. Joyce McEwen Crane. Many of you know Joyce, again, either from her Community Engagement Institute work or from her masterful work as part of the KLC teaching and coaching team. Joyce is one of my mentor coaches. She's a world-class coach. She was one of the few people in Kansas who was a trained coach before Kansas Leadership Center decided that coaching was an important intervention in leadership. So she's somebody who has a coaching set of skills and mindset and experience that predate Kansas Leadership Center. Tremendous asset to this, and a great thought partner, again, in translating the coaching mindset and coaching skills to community settings. And if you know Joyce and you want to say something wonderful about Joyce in the chat, I'll be glad to pass it on to her. She's a tremendous resource for all of us. Even though I would have a really good hour if I just talked the rest of the time, I'm not sure you would. So I have a few questions about what's been going on in Reno County, and some of this is for my information, some of this is for group information. Let me direct the first one to Carrie. Can you tell us how you've been working to build leadership capacity in Reno County?
Yeah, first I'll just say I've had both Seth and Joyce as a coach in a group and individually, so I can vouch for them, and they are inspiring to me to want to learn more about coaching. So many props to you guys. I think this will be a great experience. In Reno County, we have Leadership Reno County that is built on the KLC principles, and I think many of us have been through LRC. Both the Community Foundation and the United Way are big supporters of Leadership Reno County and believers in how that experience can help transform people's civic experience and their understanding of what is happening in our community and who is doing what, and kind of make relationships that they wouldn't have made otherwise cross-sector. So that goes on every year. We're very proud of that. And then, as Ashley mentioned, in 2019, some of us on this call got together and collaboratively wrote a Klc Transformation Grant so that we could partner with KLC and get more actual KLC slots for programming for our, particularly the nonprofit sector. We approached that grant from a community perspective and have had over 50 people go through KLC programs in the last 2 years through our grant. And we really are just trying to help people not just get introduced to KLC principles, but apply them and really adopt this common language where we can collectively support each other in kind of using what we've learned, applying it, and making more progress together. Another tool that we've experimented with is investing in coaching. Through several initiatives, we've invested in group coaching for collaborative efforts to see, how could a coach in the room help the group stay adaptive and stay curious, not get too stuck in technical issues, as well as individual coaching. And we've gotten really good feedback. We've seen great results. And so over the years, we've just been building kind of the evidence to say we need to do more to both bring coaching to our community, use it as a tool, and build our coaching mindset. And then at the same time, we are firm believers that when we have quality relationships in our community, that's when the collective thinking, the collective action, and the collective results improve. So both the training, the common language, and the relationships among our partners, we believe that is building our leadership capacity and are both a part of the work and want to support the work. So we're excited about this next phase.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. That makes a lot of sense to me. Would anyone else like to weigh in on this idea of how you've all been working to build leadership capacity in the county? Let me ask a different question, and Denise, if it's okay, I'll direct this to you. What are some of the reasons that you want to build the coaching mindset in the community, and what makes now the right time? Oh, do we still have Denise? I think maybe we lost Denise. Okay,
I think we did.
so.
And I think we may have lost Melanie too.
Maybe the United
Wow.
Way's internet cut out.
United Way must be having a problem.
We did. We missed
Yeah.
both of them. Well, we can get to that. Or
Carrie or Sarah, would you like to, take a stab at that?
Yeah. So why do we want to build the coaching mindset now and in the community? Well, the last year has given us a lot of opportunities to stay curious and adaptive and lean into our relationships, because none of us knew what was happening or what was going to happen. And we've been processing, like, how do we stay in this mindset even when, like, the urgency, the crisis is over? How do we continue to act as a community of coworkers and not go back to our silos, even though, like, we've been doing so much work to collaborate before COVID hit. We actually have made a lot of progress in the last year. So I think the coaching mindset can build on that. And Denise is back. So when she gets her audio on, maybe she can take over.
I apologize. Our internet at the United Way just decided it was going to die. Both Mel and I got kicked off. So we're on our phones.
Well, we were generating some tough interpretations of why Denise and Melanie stormed out of the meeting.
No tough interpretations, just technology issues.
Okay. Denise, we were talking about what are some of the reasons to develop a coaching mindset in the community, and what makes this the right time?
So, we've been working really hard to look at leadership differently and engage our partners differently. And we've done some great work with the Kansas Leadership Center and getting people through programs and creating a common language. And then we started looking at where our gaps were and how we can continue to make progress on so many of our issues. At the same time, we kind of lost Ron Fisher as a community coach. And we wanted to be able to still have people with those skills. And we wanted to be able to look at ways that we can continue moving the work forward in new and exciting and different ways.
Thanks for that. So to continue that thinking, and maybe Sarah, I can direct this to you, what more do you believe is possible if more people in Reno County are approaching their work with this kind of mindset? Not hearing you yet, Sarah.
I had it off and then I had it on and off. Sorry. I think that that the more of us who feel comfortable in that process of coaching, not we don't have to label ourselves as coaches, but just people who feel comfortable in allowing that room for discovery and not trying to problem solve every single second, and just hearing what the adaptive problems are, adaptive issues are. I think the healthier we're going to be, the more progress we're going to see. and just the more support we can give one another. And I have to say, Seth, you said the magic words for me. I was a little slow in drinking the KLC Kool-Aid, partially because I hadn't yet, and people were starting to use all these words that I didn't know, and I didn't like that. But I've come along, and I've figured out, I think that's part of the skills you have to develop as we all do this work, is when do you use KLC language, and how do you merge it together with everybody else's language so that we're bringing everybody along. And then when you said that you're not into woo-woo ethereal, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a good fit for a lot of us that are ready to help the community, but feeling, a little, not sure if we're brave enough yet. So thank you for that, opening that door so well.
I'm glad that resonated. And probably you'll hear this story too many times if you continue on into the training. But my introduction to coaching, I went to high school in Colorado. And so the first time I encountered somebody who was a life coach, it was somebody on Pearl Street in Boulder who did life coaching and crystal therapy. And again, I am certain that is useful for somebody. It's just, I'm not the target audience for that. So early on, when Kansas Leadership Center asked if I wanted to come to some training to be a coach, I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And the very first practice conversation we had with a partner, so it wasn't even like a trained coach, it was somebody who was also there on the first day. She asked me a question about a challenge I'd been walking around with for months that just opened up a new way of thinking that had not occurred to me before. And I made all kinds of progress in 15 seconds. And so it's that pragmatic opportunity for a jump forward on something that you're stuck on that has kept me coming back to coaching as an approach. Melanie, let me throw a question your way. How could having more tools for coaching and curiosity help you in your roles?
Well, I work with United Way of Reno County, and I work with both nonprofits and businesses. So I go visit with them, find out what's important to them. I also went through Leadership Reno County in 2018 to 19, and I have to say that was an incredible program. Wish I would have had access to it years before. So I just think it's hugely important. But I would say one of the big things is, keeping my listening ears open and remaining curious. Because a lot of times the more we listen, the more we find those connections to be able to help make that difference. And but the other thing for me about coaching is, like you said, you're not giving advice, but to me, coaching is asking the right questions to help people come up with their own answers, and it kind of challenges them to think a little bit differently sometimes. But ultimately, we want to engage people to create a mobile caring community, and that's what we do. And so my goal is to be able to just be able to listen when I'm in some of those meetings, when I'm talking with people, but to be able to create the connection and just have a conversation. It may be coaching, but I don't necessarily want it to seem like coaching. And so that's my goal. And I really feel like that could help me with what I do.
Yeah, I love that, Melanie. And Ashley, don't listen to this for a minute. In some ways, coming in as an outside coach is easy work because your job is not to have an opinion, right? Your job is to help the person or the team in front of you make progress. I think it is harder work to be in a room where you actually have an opinion and you actually have a stake, and to consciously say, I think it's going to be better for progress right now if for the next 5 minutes or 15 minutes or hour, I really use a coaching mindset and coaching skills here and try to leave some of me and my opinion out of it. That's pretty high level work. And if there's any place in the world where that can happen, it's Reno County. But I'm not pretending that it's easy to juggle those two things at the same time. It is easier to train to be a removed formal coach than to be a community person using coaching skills. And if you've been around our programs, you know that we don't think the activity of leadership is ever easy. So I don't know why using these skills should be any different. Other questions or thoughts about the overall purpose of bringing this kind of coaching mindset and set of skills into your spaces? Well, then let me talk for a moment about what we have planned for the sessions, and I'll invite Ashley and Carrie to jump in if they hear me miss a detail or have a detail to add. So we've envisioned this as 3 sessions of work. The first session is going to focus on this idea of a coaching mindset, which is something that you can consciously employ and that is infinitely renewable, but requires an active decision. Like you've got to decide, okay, right now I'm using my coaching lens. And talk about that first coaching skill that we all think we're good at and most of us suck at, which is listening. And the second coaching skill, which is exploring, and particularly exploring through asking more powerful questions. And those of you who've had KLC and or Leadership Reno County experiences have a jump on powerful questions because you've practiced it in other settings, you practice it in peer consultation, you've likely looked at the idea of appreciative inquiry along the way. So I'm going to guess that you all have an advantage on the questioning part and that you think you have an advantage on the listening part, but you're wrong. The second day is going to be focused on the skill of acknowledging, which is another one of those things that is harder to describe, I think, than to practice. But it's that idea of naming something that is going on. And for those of us who prefer to have polite conversations where no one gets challenged and nobody's fifis get stepped on, acknowledging can be a little bit of an edge. So acknowledging is part of the work. And then the part of the work that's about doing. So what makes a coaching conversation different from many other conversations is a coaching conversation always begins with a named purpose and always ends with some expectation of follow-up. And whether that happens in 5 minutes or over the course of a couple of hours, some version of that arc is there. And so coaching conversations are intended to lead to some kind of action. And we're going to spend time thinking about what does that look like, and particularly what does that look like when you're trying to use these skills in a coaching setting. Our third day together, we're deliberately leaving a little more flexible because we anticipate there are things that we're going to learn along the way that we'll either want to practice more or take another swing at or rediscover. But the third day is going to be primarily about practicing in settings that are equitable and repeatable, so that when it makes sense for you to employ these skills, you have a sense of some formats in which to do that, in which to practice. None of the skills that we're talking about are out of reach. I think like any set of skills, you'll look at the things we're talking about and say, okay, I already do that most of the time pretty naturally. That I can do as long as I think about it. This feels really clunky and it's going to need some practice. But there's nothing we're teaching that anyone here couldn't do. Coaching is as much about creating more awareness and intention as it is sharpening any specific skill. Those of you who have experience coaching or being coached, what else would you expect or hope for in this kind of training?
One thing that has, I guess, awed me about coaching, being coached, is kind of to your example, Seth, of just like how a coach can ask the right question at the right time. And I want to know how to do that better. Not get caught up in trying to anticipate what to say as a response, but stay open and stay in that listening mode enough to just like pull the right question off the shelf and put it out there. So that seems like such a art and a science, that I want to figure out how to do better.
I appreciate
Can I
that.
just say ditto? Because that asking those powerful questions, I don't know how they do it. but regardless of what question it is, it still always makes us think about what it is, and it's all internal and how we can change and come up with whatever it is we're trying to figure out.
To add to that, I think because I too have been coached by Dr. McEwen Crane, she's fabulous. But I like I'm intrigued by how do you create that connection when you're coaching so that you can build that trust, because it kind of seems like it might go at a little different pace than say we're moving our big community pace is much different. But when you're doing a coaching pace, that trusting connection, I'm interested in learning more about that, developing that.
Oh, thank you, Lori. Yeah.
When I had a coaching experience recently, what stuck with me is how Brittany was able to, she really did not give advice at all. And the thing is that she listened enough and asked enough questions that her not advice, but her action step for me was not about the challenge that I was having. It was about noticing that I wasn't taking care of myself. So I wasn't in a place that I was gonna make progress on a challenge, because I needed to, get myself up into playing shape. So I just, I want to be somebody who's always so helpful, and I want to learn how to be helpful by not talking.
It's a great story. Thank you, Sarah.
In infant toddler services, Tiny K, throughout the state of Kansas, we are using a coaching-based model to provide early intervention services to children. So we do a lot of coaching, and so we go to a lot of trainings and things about asking those reflective questions, those WH questions. Something we kind of recently is the power of 3. So before giving suggestions or talking about what you would recommend or whatever, you ask 3 questions to get to know more about that situation or the question that the family has, so that you're getting to know more and learning more about them versus just giving kind of your input. So it's very, very powerful with working with families.
I love that, Valerie. And the habit of the 3 questions, I can imagine being useful in a million situations. Like, my good days as a parent probably include a lot more questions.
Yeah, they recommend us try it with our family. So trying to ask your spouse 3 questions before you answer their question is kind of challenging. My husband gets
back
a little
to when to
frustrated with
use
me, but I'm
skills
really
and
trying to practice this.
So I'm a coach married to a restorative practices facilitator and mediator. So there's a lot of processing that happens in our house. I'll just say that. So I try not to know any details that I don't have to Ashley or to Carrie. If people are liking this idea and want to move forward, what should they do?
Well, while we have Seth and Ashley here, I would encourage everybody to ask questions, stay curious, reflective. The specific process is that we are taking applications through March 19th. And we have up to 30 slots to fill. So we're hoping that we can get 30 cross-sector diverse partners in the room so that we can do collaborative learning and build relationships in the process of learning this mindset, and then we can support each other afterward and helping practice it and stay in that mode when we need to. I know there's a pretty quick turnaround. So the first session date is April 14th. So we're working to move things along pretty quickly. But if you have any questions, that would be my first advice. Just ask them now or follow up later. And if you're at all curious about what this experience would be, I'd encourage you to fill out the application.
And one other thing I would add is if you know people who are not on this call or in this meeting who are interested, please pass the information on to them, because if there's 30 spots available, there's 15 people on this call.
And we are recording this, so if people want to know more, we can send them the link to be able to view it.
I've dropped some questions in the chat, select any or all of them. What are some things that might hold you or others back from signing up? What would you like to know about Joyce, me, or the training opportunity? What other questions or requests do you have?
You know, I just had a conversation with a staff member this morning that just hit me really hard. She had been, I think, maybe to church and talked to a group of, I think she called them old church ladies, that were complaining about the lack of diversity on our board. And immediately I can feel myself, feathers ruffled, and ready to say, they don't know the work that I do to try to find diverse people and how I ask, and, but then part of me is thinking about, how would they know that? They don't know that. And what can I do to help them understand how we value diversity? And so I'm thinking of that in the context of this group too, is how do we make sure that we're, and some of those people that aren't our typical, because nobody, I'm not surprised at anybody on this call, but I think sometimes in order to get that diversity, we have to reach out and make those individual contacts with people, that it can't be an all call.
Liberty, I want to acknowledge what you put in the chat, because I am so feeling that these days with time and making commitments and saying yes to things. And so I think the other thing for me too is I don't want to take more on unless I can be good at it. So I want to acknowledge everything that you put in that chat, because I am feeling that in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah, same. So since COVID has happened, we've been, what I do has been a lot crazier. And one of the things I decided during that was to really devote my time to those things that I'm passionate about and that I can do well. So I really have kind of scaled back on, a lot of community projects or boards that I'm on. But I am passionate about leadership and what KLC does. So I'm just trying to figure out how to fit that in to my life.
Yeah, thanks for being real with that. One thing that I will say is that this is not a training program that asks you to do a lot of outside work. So there's potentially a little bit of reading or reflection before the first day, and we're requesting that you spend an hour practicing between sessions 1 and 2 and an hour practicing between sessions 2 and 3. So the time of the program is pretty much the time of the program. And Donna, I really appreciate you bringing that that value into the room. And obviously from Cotton Field in Cowley County, I can't do much in terms of your recruitment, but I'm glad that's important to you. And one of the things that I've appreciated about working in and with Reno County over the years is that Reno County has really grown in its awareness of and commitment to diversity and inclusion.
One observation is that most of us here are nonprofit staff, but we are really curious about how to engage board members in this thinking and what more could be possible at organizations when there's both staff and some board members, or at least one who comes into the room with that curiosity and coaching mindset. So think about who's on your board, or who's a friend that is on a board, or a volunteer that you think it, has the capacity to do this. Even if they, have a for-profit day job. I mean, like Ashley said, this program is usually built for the private industry, and we're sort of adapting it for community. So I think, from my understanding of the experience of what it will be, that there would be, even personal and professional value for a board member to get both for their work life and their volunteer life. So know that it's not exclusive to just nonprofit staff. I do have another question for you, Seth. Are there any like signs, characteristics, identity markers that tell you, somebody is primed to kind of be ready for a coaching mindset or coaching training? Is there anything you're looking for that somebody can kind of see in themselves to say, oh, I identify with that, I could see myself doing that training?
I don't think I have a really specific answer to that. I think people who have recognized that their current approaches only get them so far are great candidates for adding this as another option. It's easier to answer people who I don't think are ready for this. And unfortunately, I think it's a blind spot for people. It's hard to see this in yourself, except looking back at earlier versions of yourself. But people who are really smart and who know they're really smart and who are really tied up in providing answers have the most to unlearn in order to be able to engage in a coaching mindset. And I don't know at what point in our lives we're able to let some of that go, but I'm not sure if I'd been introduced to coaching 10 or even 5 years before I was, if I'd have been ready to let go. Like, I got to be the one with the answer that people listen to. I guess what I hope you're hearing in that is that these are learned and learnable mindsets and skills. But like any learning, you have to be ready to let go of whatever's kept you from learning that before.
This is Kale Dennison, and I am a volunteer who's fairly active in several different roles in Hutchinson. And they're all nonprofits that I do things for. One of the questions that kind of is rolling around in my head is, a lot of people who are involved in this process or who've been invited to participate, they do actually work for the nonprofits. And so part of me feels like, is this something that is appropriate for someone at my level, if you will, where I'm just a volunteer? But the reason why I'm interested in it is because I think that we can make more progress if we tackle things in a different way than we have been. And I would like to be part of that facilitating the solution. But I'm questioning, my role is very different than everyone else on this call. So I'm just kind of questioning if this is the right fit, or if there's a better way for me to tackle this problem.
So I'm going to let some of my biases about volunteer management and organizations show, which is maybe not very coach-like, Kale. If you are involved in organizations and you take on roles in which a nonprofit says, we need you to set up chairs and stuff envelopes, please come do that for 30 minutes and then go home, then coaching mindset and skills probably aren't going to add a lot to your volunteer experience or to your ability to help the causes that you care about grow and evolve. If you're involved in nonprofits that engage you also as a thought partner, planner, community voice, representative, strategist, any or all of those things, then I think also having the opportunity to employ a coaching mindset and coaching skills could be incredibly useful for you and incredibly useful for them. I do think that sometimes nonprofits, for understandable and sad reasons, can get into the mindset of, my volunteers are not here to help me shape my future. My volunteers are here to help me get my task list complete. And that kind of space doesn't lend itself to coaching. And for all of you volunteers for all of you nonprofits who are in this room, I know you're all the good guys and none of you ever do that. But just in case Kale or other people who primarily identify as volunteers are in the room, I want to name that power dynamic that is sometimes there.
And
I don't know, Kale, did you get anything out of that?
Yeah, I did. Fortunately, I do feel like that I am in a position, and I'm both on the school board for USD 308, as well as I've been a 16-year volunteer for the Boy Scouts of America, and I'm on the board for there. So I do feel like I am in a position where I'm not always the boots on the ground person. I'm more, I do plenty of boots on the ground, but I'm also kind of helping shape some things and doing things at a different level as well. So thank you.
Kel, I would also add that, you know, when we initially kind of put this idea into a think tank to explore, we did it with the perspective that we wanted to engage volunteers also, and our business partners as well. because, you know, as we look forward, we know that those public-private partnerships and nonprofit partnerships are going to be pivotal in our community, in the work that we're doing. And so as this was kind of thought about and developed, we did it with the intention of inviting people just like you into the conversation, and into the trainings, and so you can practice and have the ability to help us do the work, basically.
And I would like to continue on some of the thing that was brought to our attention just within the past couple of weeks. You know, when we have people that volunteer, if somebody says, oh, well, do you have something that needs done? Well, sure, we need filing done, but that doesn't mean that's where their expertise is. So just because somebody does do a volunteer project for us that doesn't use all their gifts and their talents doesn't mean that they wouldn't qualify for this program. So we really want to make sure we keep our minds open to those that do want to help make a difference.
What else is on your minds or in your guts today? Well, I am really excited to get to know and know better 30 committed Reno County folks. And I hope that this has given you a sense of some of the mindset that I bring in. And while I'm not sure Joyce would use all the words I use, I think Joyce and I have a pretty aligned philosophy to both coaching and community work. So I think I've been fair to her too. We are a little bit playful. We are very careful about time boundaries and breaks, and we challenge people to get out on their edge and try the things they're not good at yet. So if those sound like things that would help you learn, this is probably right for you. Ashley, final words from KLC?
Just hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Good to see you.
Thank you, friends.